That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla. We are joined now by Brian Christopherson, Husker247, BC. What's going on, bud?
Oh, not much. How are you guys?
Hi B, how are things?
Oh, pretty swell. How about you?
Good. We're just parsing through all the information. I've joked with you about this in the past because I don't think we're super used to it, but we got it again yesterday, and then all of a sudden the content spiraled, and I'm curious, is it that we're not used to? Maybe it's just kind of the day and age. I'll listen to any response because I believe you're extremely bright. How come when guys are pretty forthright and pretty honest with the information that they're telling us, we still try to like read between the lines as though they're saying something else? Like, is that just natural human behavior, or like why do you think we try to do more with what was said than what was actually said?
I don't know for sure. I guess I think with human nature, there is
Do
that.
you agree, first of all? Because maybe it's just
Well,
me.
on our message board yesterday, it wasn't. I didn't see too much where I thought stuff was taken out of context. So I don't know what like the percentage is. I heard you guys in the first hour, and I know there was Rule had the quote where he was talking pretty fully about Dylan Raiola and various things he can do, and he mentioned a specific weight he doesn't want him to play at, but I didn't necessarily take that, nor do I hope a high percentage didn't take that was definitely the weight, and also to make a big thing of it. So if that was something that people locked in on, I don't quite understand that one. I don't know if there were other areas where that happened. I think it's just that's one of Dylan's missions this offseason is be that guy who can scramble a little bit more, be nimble in the pocket. And he was just stressing that point about that's ongoing as you work hard at 6 a.m. every morning. And it sounds like that's what he does. So if people don't think that guy isn't getting after it, they're also not paying attention to some of the stuff that Rule has said about his QB, because he's like one of the first guys in the building.
Yeah, BC, it is kind of funny that we want to take a number like 240 and take that as gospel truth. But as you're saying, we've heard, to kill shorts talk about what time Dylan gets there and beats him to the weight room. We've heard Rule on McAfee and other programs talk about the work ethic of his quarterback. And while we take the 240 for gospel truth, we tend to not take the rest of it. Like, I don't.
I wonder if it's in response to criticisms they've heard to protect their quarterback.
It could be. Also, this could be out in left field, but remember the press conference a couple months ago where Rule was saying, "Don't believe everything you read," and he used the example about it was like a weird like AI type story, I think, about like his wife like maybe being pregnant. He used the example, and she's not, and people just ran with it and would go up to him every day and say congratulations and stuff like that. And there's this weird thing going on now, like it's on Facebook and stuff like this, where certain people there's information that's coming in that the stories aren't even real, that have to do with Husker football. And I actually do think there's a percent. I hope it's a small percentage, but I do think there is a small percentage of the fan base where sometimes I'll hear someone bring up a particular subject, like, "Oh, what's going on over there with this?" and it's not even a real thing. And so I'll double down on what he said a couple months ago, and that they can do the same with us. I mean, be careful about what you read, check it out, think for yourself on that. Does that make sense, or am I parsing through this right? Or maybe I'll listen to the whole thing and get the full context. So I do hope I'm trusted with what we put out and stuff like that. But I do hope people, pay attention and think about, like, am I just taking what someone said over here and now acting like that's what happened without even thinking for myself or looking at it? I hope that's not going on.
BC, when you're talking about kind of an engagement and the off season, and I mean, I heard the off season question, and I also heard his Coach Rule's non-response to that. Do you think are your is your board or your people, are we played out with Nebraska information, or are there like these little hot button things? Like obviously this has gotten some run that the fan base really cares about. How do your people buoy the actual results on the field versus having real-time information in terms of their care meter?
Yeah, I think they still want the information, but then there's sometimes the response, and I understand this too, to say, I'm tired of it. Like I've all, there's kind of this trigger. I don't know if it's specific stories, but something that makes them says, yeah, I heard that last year. I heard that the last, 10 years, whatever. And so, yeah, it is an interesting balance right now. I think it feels like it's sort of been a long breather between the calendar has changed, where there's this time period between December now where there's this rush of information with the portal and early signing day and all that. And you used to have pretty good filler with that February signing day, and that's gone now. And so now you have like 3 to 4 months before spring ball where you kind of, people are, I think, tapping their toes a little bit, and you fill the time with your own thoughts sometimes. And there's sort of a search for information, but also like there's only so much info out there. Like the guys haven't even started spring ball yet. And so I do think it's a tricky time where sometimes, because not a lot's happening that we can actually see and grab, we kind of fill the air with our own thoughts in certain cases, or people do. And so that's probably where we're at. I don't know how you move around that. That's why I was happy when I heard Rhule the other day say, like, he likes spring ball. Like I hope that we don't ever eliminate spring ball, because I actually like that there's actually some sense of football going on during that month, and we're getting some of those development stories. I think it's good for the players too, but I also think it's actually good for the fan base, as opposed to sitting around for 6 months with nothing.
BC, through all these comments and a lot of the conversations we've heard over the last, couple months, I guess, as Nebraska's filling coaching staff out and front office positions, I guess is what we'll call them, and all these other things. It seems like there's been Nebraska fans, it seems like, have been clamoring for a really long time for the program to act like a big boy program, right? And it seems like now that Coach Rhule is operating and writing checks like a big boy program, that there seems to be a little bit of discomfort with it as well. Do you sense that tension at all? And if so, where do you think that comes from?
Maybe a little bit, but if there is, they have to get over it. That I agree with Rhule that I think Nebraska is as well positioned. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I do think they're well positioned to potentially come out of this shaky time in college sports, if we want to call it shaky, whatever you want to say it is, where it feels like the ground's sort of moving. You heard Rhule the other day compare it to like his first year in Carolina in 2020, with the COVID, and you have a plan for 3 to 4 months, and then you get a memo from the office. You got to switch gears. And one of the reasons I give Nebraska a real fighting shot here is because I think Rhule has kind of been through this before. And so I think that aids him. And I also, I say this all the time, but it's almost the most central thing to me, is you've got to have someone in that chair who's like, okay, this is where it's changing. I'll change with it. And I can develop and I can tweak my game a little bit. I don't tweak my principles. Like, they're doing most of the stuff behind the scenes. It sounds like very much the same, and are going to stick with that. But these areas, outside with rev sharing and everything that's coming, I think they have their eye on the prize, and there's a thought that Nebraska can come out of this and be one of the elite athletic departments, as he said the other day. So where other people are seeing kind of chaos and some of the troubles, which I understand that, at least you have to have people in leadership who see possibility. And I do think they have some of that over there.
All right, this is where I need you to sit me down, BC. We just cracked open some Canada Dry ginger. Well, you can have your coffee in your giant mug. I'm gonna have a ginger ale here.
I only have one mug this week too, by the way. I had 2 coffee mugs last week, and you guys gave me crap.
So these interesting schools of thought where, with more people and departments and overseeing specifics, that there's this evolution of the CEO, right? That's the real thing. But I think the more that this happens, or the more people that do this, the more hands-on he can be with what he wants to be hands-on with.
Exactly.
Is that okay? So I think he actually is gaining more control than less as I look at this from the outside in.
Yeah, I think so too. Now I think there's certain things that are coming up where you do have to, the football coach, it's not all football, and that's where it's very valuable to have like Phil Snow and Dana Holgerson and John Butler have coached a while. But I think you're onto something with all this other stuff. If you have a Pat Stewart who you really trust, as you put together your evaluations, and you have Sean Patton and Haven Fields and these guys that you really believe in, and like they can get that stuff down to the penny. I'm in on the meetings, I know what's going on, but I know over there they're doing what they're supposed to do. That allows me to accentuate my strengths as a coach and overseer of this, and I think that could definitely take shape. And I know he joked about, like, Phil Snow joking about, like, the other day they were out there for a mat drill and there's like 90 staffers like on the field. And I'm sure it's like humorous. Like if you're Phil Snow or somebody and you used to have like 8 to 12 people. But take Dane Key's comments the other day. This is kind of veering a little bit, but he was being asked about Da'Keel Shorts. And he mentioned like Andrew Verbois is on staff also, like coaching as with receivers at Nebraska, and like helps him with his change of direction. And Da'Keel helps me with that. And I was thinking like, man, even that one position, he's got two guys where he knows that can accent certain parts of his game, and that's just one spot. So I think, yeah, the more and more there's people that you really trust in that, it helps Rhule or anybody to really lock in on certain things that he needs to on a given day.
So, it's kind of funny, BC. We talk about how large these coaching staffs are and how large the administrative staff is and everything like this. And I always go to the NFL, right? And it's funny to me because you're talking about literally half the size of the roster with an NFL team. And the average number last year for coaches on an NFL team was 23.
Okay.
Just coaches, not front office staff at all. And we're kind of losing our minds about however many, I don't know what the number is for Nebraska right now, but however many coaches are at Nebraska right now managing twice as many guys. We're like, that's the standard operating procedure in the NFL, is to have, it's almost a 1-to-2 ratio of coaches to guys on the active roster. And we're not talking about 50 coaches here at Nebraska, and we're not even talking about front office staff yet here with the NFL. Like it's just sort of, it's a funny narrative to me. And it is funny to see a bunch more guys out there when you're used to.
Yeah.
But I don't really have a question in there. I find it kind of amusing when we're like, oh, it's going to an NFL model. It's going to an NFL model. And then we see more coaches. We're like, whoa, too many cooks in the kitchen.
He was clear that it's vastly different.
He is in terms of like the execution, but in terms of just like the numbers.
Yeah.
It just kind of, it blows my mind that we are having a hard time wrapping our mind around the number of coaches.
Yeah, with all these topics we chase around, it comes down to if they win a few more games this fall. I do think that takes care of some of that. I just think there's sort of that pent up anxiousness that comes, and I understand it. We've been through that. With like wanting to see it. Okay, make that move now. Get into that elite circle or get close to it or right on the fringe of it this year. And so I do think there's that opportunity, and there's that word I'd use to do that in 2025. And we'll see how people respond then. And like, get us back in the fall about talking about even when the AP rankings come out on a Sunday, Nebraska's 15th and you think they should be 12th. Like those are the sort of silly conversations I want to get into, and hope that this team and what they're working at right now behind the scenes can help them get there.
BC, when you hear Coach Rhule talk and the staff, and last week and the 2 weeks before that, as they were kind of rolling out the new staff, one of the prevailing themes that I heard was like teaching and development, right? Teaching and development and teaching and development. And almost everybody was kind of echoing the same sentiments. It seems like the other thing that's going with that is kind of this whole head down, just play football thing where, just get better. How many times have we heard just get better in probably the last 3 or 4 weeks from this staff? Do you think, and maybe quietly isn't the way that they're doing it, but that has now become the focus of next leveling this roster where you can just be more mature and focus on getting better?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just be a pro. And a couple of guys said that the other day, and maybe they have different circumstances, the guys who were speaking yesterday, than some of the others because they're sort of on a 1-year mission. But I think they can set a tone in part because of that. Like a guy like Dane Key or Dasan McCullough and Watson Trent. You heard McCullough talk about how like they send text message back and talk to each other about let's go after this and let's attack this like we're pros, every day. And that can filter down too. And I think you've got some young guys that have that mindset as well. And then they have to, again, the word is opportunity. You see it like on the defensive line. Like, I mean, there's questions to be answered there. As you heard Rhule the other day, like Ty Robinson was a cheat code, and you can't take for granted what Nash and those guys meant, MJ Sherman. And so if I'm Riley Van Poppel, if I'm Cam Lenhart, I hear that, I know that, and that fires me up to do exactly what you're saying, Damon, and just like, let's get better today because my chance is right there to grab. It's all on me. There's guys in the secondary who can do the same thing. I know there's a lot of veterans returning back there. I think that's going to be a really heated competition. I think there's young guys chomping at the bit. So all across the board, O-line in this spring. I mean, there's 4 main guys out. There's a big chance for your Sam Sledge or Jason Chaychok, guys like that to make your move, and so exactly like to take advantage of this day because they're watching everything and you've got a chance to be a big part of this team. And so I think that is a message that resonates.
It's interesting. Did the amount of guys not going through spring ball concern you at all, or just kind of the cost of doing business with being cautious?
It seemed slightly high to me compared to some years, but I wasn't sure because normally I don't know that we've ever had the head coach come in and just put the whole list out at the same time right before spring ball. And so what happens a lot of years is you might hear like 3 names here and then on another Tuesday, a couple more names. And so you'll look over like in the practices where we'll have access and there are, a dozen or more guys like in a yellow jersey. So I couldn't tell if it was maybe a little bit more, but I also understand the caution. You've got some veterans in there, obviously like Corcoran and Prohaska, who you're seeing how they come out of it. Carter Nelson with that hip procedure he had done, that's a big deal. That hopefully he hits the ground running, like in the summer. With that, the one that interests me, I guess, was Jalen George, and I actually kind of wanted to ask a follow up on him specifically, but didn't. Just because I thought he was a really interesting portal addition and could see how, like, for a guy like him or Jameer Khan, who came in also, it's got to really stink to not be out there and be on that list when you just got here.
Yeah, I don't know if it's precaution or, I would guess with some,
Probably a mixed
it's
bag.
probably a mixed bag,
Yeah.
right?
Yep, definitely.
And kind of having
versus active injuries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some equity. But I think that's a good point where you said, sometimes we just get a few at a time.
Yeah.
He just gave us the whole
was
laundry list
yeah.
because it didn't really move my needle a ton, except for the message after that from guys like Rocco was, hey man, it's not always just the 5 best. It's, the guys that
can be available.
Oh no, basically move the same. Like,
yeah.
Kind of the whole 1 unit thing, which I thought was interesting because that's a philosophy that I think a lot of times people don't subscribe to when they try to decide who's playing and who's not playing on the offensive line. But the other thing I thought was interesting, BC, is we've kind of penciled in Rocco to do X, Y, and Z, and we've thrown around numbers. And But I thought it was interesting how he said when he left Notre Dame, the writing was on the wall. It was kind of, they had different thought processes, and apparently he may not have been in their plans long term. Did that change your expectation of what he means or what he has to do at the University of Nebraska, or what you're expecting him to do at Nebraska?
It just adds to the element of a guy who I think's got to be extremely motivated. Like McCullough and watching Trent. It's like, I know that I've played good football. I know it's out there, but there's more. And I just, I want someone that believes in me that I'm going to go get that now. I think it's a cool opportunity for him to be a leader in a way. But the other thing that I thought was important was when Rhule said, more or less, that he's a good listener. He's not like one of those guys who just rolls in and is like, I've been to a national championship and done this and that. I think he's good with the give and take with the guys, and it sounds like it's fit in really well from everything I've heard. So I think that was a big addition, not just because he's played a lot of football, but I think he's got the right mentality. I think they found guys, they did their research on guys who entered from the portal that can merge into this thing and get right after it, and want to lead by example, but also want to learn from others too that have been in this program, even if they're a few years younger. And I think that's a big thing.
And it's not coincidence, right? With the guys we get to hear at the podium, it just reiterates kind of my thought process that even through the portal, it is still about development.
Yeah, absolutely. And a big thing to me too, look
at McCullough's frame. I know you had to be floored, right? You're like, is this dude hoop?
Yeah.
And people are like, it was just funny too, because in the offseason when he first said yes, we were like, oh man, maybe he could play on the third level. I'm like, third? I don't even know about the second.
They might be an edge rusher.
His frame is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. He played at low 230s last year, wants to play about 240, he said, this season at that jack spot. I mean, all those guys got interesting stories and reasons to be determined, besides this is one of those make or break years when you have one season before you're going to the pros. And, he's moved around a lot in his college career. I think he wants to have a home at a spot. I think they think he can be versatile, where he can stay out there no matter the different schemes they put on people. So that one's interesting. I mean, Watson Trent is the same way. There's a guy who played at a lower level that wants to show he's a Big Ten linebacker. Dane Key wants to, I think, prove he's been in that, 600 yard, 700 yard category, knock that up a notch. All those guys have some fuel that should be good for their rooms. And I think too, like I said, that this staff thought long and hard about guys that are grateful to be here, guys that aren't just going to come in and be like, oh, this is the way I did it over here. They're going to listen. And to hear them talk about the mat drills the other day had to be heartwarming to Husker fans. Just like, you have a guy who just came from a team that was in the national championship game at Spindler, and he's like, that thing was legit. I haven't seen that. Key hadn't seen that at Kentucky, McCullough at Oklahoma. So if anyone doubts that thing is for real and a little old school and different than some places, they should have just listened to the three guys up at the podium.
That's our guy, Ryan Christopherson, Husker247, BC. Great stuff as always. We appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks, B.